Here.
Well, I think you're all paying attention, you're all seated. We don't really need a final warning for you guys at this traditional 4:15 in the Saturday afternoon session. So you are officially the hardcore. You were here on time, and we're delighted that you are. But the person who is really delighted that you are is the moderator. And the moderator for this afternoon session is Leticia Perez from Kern County. Kern County is an interesting county, and we hear lots of tall tales from Kern County from our board member, Leticia Perez, who's a supervisor down there. That'll make your toenails curl, some of them. But others of them make you very happy. Anyway, it is now yours, the floor.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. I can remove this, right?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. See a couple more folks trickling in, so we come on in. You're right on time. Perfect. Good to see you. Welcome. So for those of you that have not painstakingly sat through my sob story of what has recently happened with my home, I would love to share it with you now. I know Supervisor Dillon had to sit through this afternoon a gory 20 minutes of listening to my personal story, but I'd love to share it with you just a tad. October 17th of last year at 12:40 in the morning, I was dead asleep. My son, 4-year-old son, was dead asleep in his room, 2 rooms over. My husband woke me up pretty frantically. It's about 12:40. And he said, Leticia, wake up, get the phone, get Jude, and get out. The house is on fire. And I said, the house is not on fire. And of course, the house was on fire. And we had the incredible misfortune of earlier in the day, having had some roofing work done, very simple job that sounded, when it was explained to me, like something my 4-year-old and I could have done on our own. And I regretted slightly even calling a professional to come do it. It sounded so simple. But nonetheless, the work was done about 4. They used really, really hot tar on a very, very old house. And lo and behold, 8 hours later, poof. My house is no longer what we knew it to be. And so we rushed out of our home, and within 30 minutes, we found out that it would be at least 6 months before we could step back into our home again. And having not one piece of dry clothing. It's a pretty shocking experience, very unsettling. And the next 3 months we spent October, November, December living in 3 different places with all of our possessions. So to say that it has been the wildest ride of my life is an understatement. We are less than 30 days from going home now. And so there is a silver lining. While it has been 5 months of HE double hockey sticks and a really incredible learning experience in a very short period of time, there is a silver lining. And one of them is that we learned we really had no insulation in our home. The home was built in '32. We thought we had bad insulation because of our utility bills. We were certain that it was not functioning as well as some more modern homes, but we discovered that we didn't even have badly performing insulation. We actually have no insulation. And in the summers in Bakersfield, as you can imagine, we would keep our home at 78, 80 degrees, sometimes 82, and our bills would be right around $500 a month. And it would be very uncomfortable. But we had no choice. The winters were the exact same. It would be pretty chilly in the home, and yet it was always around $400 or $500, even though we were relatively uncomfortable. So when we move back in 30 days, we will have insulation, we'll have a modern heating system, we will have energy efficient windows, etc., etc., etc. And we are quite delighted because trying to finance that on our own is actually pretty difficult. And actually finding the time to even do it, right? Or the expertise, or who are those folks on the market that really can help you through the process, bring the services to you, and who are the private sector partners that are even interested in such a thing. Finding that, even for someone like myself, proved to be quite difficult. So I am delighted to be moderating the talk with you today. to bring hope to the Central Valley and the rest of the state of California, that in order to make your home energy efficient, you do not have to have it burned to the ground. There are ways to make this happen that are much more functional, much more sustainable, and they don't put as much pressure on your marriage as what happened to us the last 5 months. So with that said, it really is a delight to be able to moderate a conversation on a subject that I'm incredibly passionate about with two folks that really have the expertise, the know-how, the wherewithal, and the desire to bring such simplicity and peace and betterment into the lives of all of our wonderful California families. So with that said, I would like to introduce two individuals who are here to share their expertise and passion with you today. One of them is Josh Brock. Would you raise your hand, Mr. Brock? Thank you very much. And the other is Ian Parker. And if I could tell you just a tad bit about him very quickly, while we have some folks struggling in. Thank you so much. Welcome. You missed a very exciting story about my house burning down. The long story short, you do not have to let it burn down to become energy efficient. There are other ways to do it. So Joshua Brock. Joshua Brock is the Director of Community Development for Renovate America and works with local governments that have joined Renovate America's Hero PACE program to enhance community goals around economic development, job creation, and sustainability. Prior to Renovate America, Josh was with San Diego Gas and Electric, where he oversaw engagement with local, regional, and state governments. Josh also worked at the City of San Diego, where he managed a number of legislative policy and sustainability initiatives. He is also a founding member of the San Diego Climate Collaborative and serves as board vice president for Build It Green. When we get to Ian, I'll tell you a little more about him. But for now, Josh, please spend 15 to 20 minutes discussing the scale of HERO's existing and potential reach and ability to significantly contribute to state energy and climate goals. Also, please address how local governments can partner with HERO to provide PACE financing to their communities and specific strategies you've seen or would recommend that go beyond signing an MOU to helping advance the uptake of building energy upgrades. The floor is officially yours.
Awesome. Thank you very much. All right. So I'm going to start off with an apology. I had to laugh because Jackson and you said yesterday sort of resonated with me, which was the swear box. You know, where every time you swear you get $1 or something to that effect. Yeah.
I forgot to bring out the box, so I failed in my duties.
No, it's good. So it's strong impetus. Let me explain why that's important to me. So I was raised Irish Catholic. I have a lot of Irish. I'm also a Scorpio. So for all of you who follow astrology, we can see over there. You know, there's kind of a lot coming out here. I was also raised by a single mom who's ex-military, and she was not shy with her words as well. So, and I've learned a couple languages, and I've also learned that languages, the words you choose are very important because each word sort of means something, and sometimes you really have to convey something in a very short period of time.
Louder?
Better?
Yes.
There you go.
Better? Okay. I'll just swallow this, that'll work out. So I learned that sometimes you have to convey something in a very short period of time, and the words you choose can be really effective. My mom taught me that very well. So all that said, I'm going to do my absolute best to keep everything on point today. That's hard for me, and I've got dollars in my pocket in case I missed out. All right, so I'm here to talk to you today about creating livable communities through partnership. And so I wanted to sort of jump off. Real quick, is everyone sort of familiar with what PACE is, property assessment, energy financing? Raise your hand if you're not, and I'll give you the quick,
Probably something real quick.
Yes, I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway for the camera. So PACE, or property assessment and energy financing, is a financing mechanism for property owners to pay for energy and water saving improvements on their property. They pay it back through a special assessment that's placed on their property, and then it gets paid through the property taxes. So that's the sort of quick pitch on there. So I wanted to start the conversation today to talk about market failures. And when I'm talking about market failures, what I mean and how I define a market failure is when the market fails to follow through or accomplish the public policy goals to which we have for our communities. So that's the lens that I look at a market failure through. So let me start with this. Every year, you can read it, but this is the other part of this is like we have like slide decks that we use. I prefer pictures, but I was told that this was the best way to present information. So you get to read as I speak. So every year, 1 in 6 homeowners will make an improvement on their property that affects the energy consumption of that property. And that's, by the way, that's, as you can see, that's 22.5 million homes across America. And 3 out of 4 of those homeowners will not choose the most efficient option. So that's a lot of missed opportunity. That's 17 million homes of missed opportunity. The market failure here is not actually, in my opinion, from the consumer's perspective. To me, it's the ecosystem to which they make that decision in is where the failure exists. I'll talk about that more later. But we have other sort of market failures that exist around the public policy perspective. And market failures could be simply because that the market hasn't been able to sort of contextualize what you're trying to accomplish, and therefore there's not a mechanism to which they know how to implement these sort of policies or goals that you have for your communities. So old housing stock, aging housing stock that needs to get upgraded, or commercial buildings where they've been built a long time ago and still are operable, but they're not ideal, and they just sort of have this cost to the community by them not investing in their properties. And also with that, as you said, we want to preserve the characters of our communities. And that doesn't mean we don't want to bulldoze these wonderful old homes. And I live in a 1925 Craftsman in San Diego, and I also have an installation in my home. And I've slowly been kind of going through that, but it's, you know, it's a challenge. It is a challenge. But we want to keep those homes around because they add character to their history in our community. And so how do we solve that without just ripping them all out and building brand new compliant with Title 24 buildings? And also, we want our communities to be more resilient. Resilient around energy, resilient around water, resilient in the sense of having walkable, livable, lively communities, resilient in the face of disaster, fires, heat waves. And so, how does the market sort of help us out with that? Understanding that in order to accomplish these goals, that's a significant capital investment that has to take place. So, that sort of brings me back to my organization. And one of the items I want to hit on today, so in the spirit of this conference being all about the letter P, partnerships. So the strongest partnerships, the partnerships that bring the most value, are the ones where they have the most shared values, where you and the organization that you're working with or partnering with, where you have a significant number of shared values to which you're both acting upon and implementing in your communities. So what you have up here is our organization, these are our values, and we view fundamentally the reason that an organization would even consider, that a local government would even consider having HERO or PACE available in their community, is that there are shared values that you have, whether it's you want more solar or distributed generation in the community, you want to have jobs created, you want to protect consumers by increasing the level of consumer protections available and how they invest in their properties. And you can see there's lots of other things up there, but we believe fundamentally that we have these shared values with our consumers and with our local governments, and we take that as the highest value and the most important thing that we sort of operate on. So, when we talk about how HERO helps, and I'll start with scale for each. So, and some of you guys have probably, I've heard some of these pitches before, but let me just kind of go through it. So we operate in 385 jurisdictions, actually I think it's 388 if I saw my last email straight, across California. We cover more than 85% of the population of California, and by the end of the year we expect to cover more than 95% of the population. In the time since we've rolled out this program, we've helped over 56,000 homeowners invest $1.3 billion into those properties. And at this point, I'm just speaking about residential. So these are 56,000 homes on an individual basis through individual transactions who have invested $1.3 billion. And that's all private capital that goes into their properties. So what does that mean? So here's sort of the impact that $1.3 billion has had, right? So $2.2 billion in local economic impact. That's the velocity of that money going in the community, meaning that's that money getting out there. That's paying for not just that equipment in there, but that's the salary that that person collects that then goes into the community to do all those other things. It's a lot of money. It's over 11,000 jobs created or sustained. It's 3.4 billion gallons of water saved, 8.5 billion kilowatt hours of energy, $2.6 billion in utility savings. I know for a lot of us that speaks very clearly, because $2.6 billion in utility savings, that's money that doesn't leave your community. That's money where your constituents can now pocket that. They can do more things locally. They can go out to eat. They have more disposable income. They can take care of other needs and necessities they may have without having to worry about a $600 heating bill, cooling bill that they may have. And also for Assembly Bill 32 and all of the other policies we have in California, it's 2.3 billion, sorry, I wish it was billion, 2.3 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions that have been prevented. But let me make this, so big picture stuff is really great, but then it's hard to contextualize what that means at the local level. So here is a case study for the city of San Diego. This is where I'm from. So in the city of San Diego, in their climate action plan, they set out to retrofit by 2020 6,324 units. And by doing so, they ended up to save just under 3,200 tons of carbon dioxide. And they set a goal even farther than that said by 2035, we want to retrofit almost 18,000 units. And when they went through this process, they used the best available sort of policy options that they had available, which was disclosure ordinances, a handful of other sort of tools that was kind of will inform you about it, and then through that decision-making process, there's people who will then sort of choose to be more efficient, choose to add solar, choose to do these other things. In 2014, they adopted HERO for their communities. And what you have here is just a graph of that trajectory. So where they're at right now, they're going to hit their 2020 goals just through HERO. They have other PACE programs that operate in their jurisdiction as well. California First is there. I believe there's some other providers. So this is just the HERO, so these numbers aren't even complete. They've already done over 2,200 retrofits. They're going to hit their 2020 goals by probably about mid-2017. And at their current trajectory, they're going to hit their 2035 goals by sometime in 2019. Which is impressive, right? But perhaps more important is this graph on the bottom. So this shows the trajectory that they were expecting for greenhouse gas emission reductions. And so those first 2 years, and so those are 2014, 15, 16, and so on, that just shows where they thought their greenhouse gas emissions were at. So already, they're actually almost at their 2020 goals. And by the time they get to 2020, they'll be far exceeding their 2035 goals in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. So it's a significant impact on that community, on top of all the other benefits that it's able to bring. Okay, so one of the requests for me today was to talk about specific strategies that we can bring to bear to really accomplish some of these actions. So let me start with this. Before we talk about success, it's helpful to remember that you're not in it alone, and that, you know, I love the smile on this kid's face, but it's a big challenge. Everything we do it's a big challenge ahead of us. And so the first thing to remember is that you're not in it alone, right? This is not an insurmountable task, right? So once you've sort of gotten over that sort of mental barrier of like, oh my God, how am I going to accomplish this? Like, what are the tools available to me, these big lofty goals? You go from here to here, right? Challenge accepted. And this is in the spirit of this conference, which is how do you think like a startup? And this is how we think. We take big, lofty goals, and then we think, okay, how do we accomplish this? How do we overcome these barriers? How do we succeed without getting sort of lost in all of the, wow, this is going to be really hard. So once you're there, there's simple things that you can do.
That's me, everyone.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I wanted to bring this up because some of the easiest strategies, and I'll say the majority of strategies require very little effort from you as a local government to really accomplish this. So right here was the County of Kern just welcoming HERO into their jurisdictions. And this is, I think, no different than new business opening up, where you do a ribbon cutting, and PR events are very simple like that. And in other jurisdictions, we've been able to do things like utility bill inserts, and just, you know, basically fundamental, your basic marketing functions. So that's not a difficult thing to accomplish. The majority of the cost is generally borne by whoever's requesting you to sort of be out there doing this. But that's not what I really wanted to talk about today. Well, and I did want to kind of get this up there and
Got it.
got it. I think my wife says that a lot. She does. So this is not what I wanted to really talk to you guys about, because this is something that you guys know how to do. What I wanted to talk to you about is in kind of opening your mind about where the real opportunity exists. So I asked you what is PACE, and then And everyone sort of said, yeah, I think we kind of know what that is, and I gave you a quick pitch. A PACE is just a tool. And a tool is only limited by how you decide to use it, right? So when you're really looking at this, how do you be successful? The lens that you look at it through, what is success to you, right? And once you understand what success is, how you want to measure this, what you're looking to accomplish, then you can start to really look at, well, I've got these tools, that I've only been using it for this, but what else is out there? And I put up some of the things, this is stuff that we've heard from our sort of ecosystem of actors, right? So success is penetration in the community, success is people using the program, success is the availability and the equity of the program in my community. It's not just about people using it, but it's making sure that everyone has access to it and there's a fair share for everyone to really access this. There's environmental impacts, economic impacts, consumer protections. Once you're there, once you know what success is to you, then you can really move forward. And I get back to the shared value things, because for us, when we know what your success is, we know how we can bring value to them. And that's where we see we're able to generate the most success. And I wanted to bring up, I'm not going to name the city's name, but in San Bernardino, we were approached by a city who had an opportunity to get a bunch of money from HUD. And the prerequisite is they just had to prove that they had communities who really were in need of sort of weatherization sorted out, right? So that they wanted to be able to prove to HUD that they had communities that could use with low-cost retrofits, things such as insulation, air sealing, weather stripping on their doors. And their biggest challenge was data. They knew where their low-income communities were. They knew where they had their communities of color. They knew based on census data where they could sort of target that. But what they didn't know is what is the community actually doing? And so they said, hey, Josh, you guys are sort of active in our community. Do you have any idea if PACE is even something that people are considering in these areas? I said, actually, we do. And I'm glad you asked, because we've got the data, we didn't know this was useful to you. So what we did, and I don't know how strong the internet connection is, but I'd be happy to pull it up later. We have an online tool that we developed that puts all the data that we have on what's happening in our communities. We put it up there and we make it accessible to all of our local governments. And that community was able to drill down on these sections of their community and through the data, look at where are people applying for the program. And then when they're applying for it, are they getting approved for the program? And that answers questions like, how much equity do they have in the property? Are they even interested in this? Who's out there applying to it? What type of contractors are active in those communities? And then from there, they were able to put their application into HUD and make a really, really strong case, and they were successful in receiving a very substantial grant from HUD. That's success. And that's using the tool that we have to further your policy goals. And I bring this up because, this is my last slide. I bring it up because, I haven't talked about the graph. When you want to create and effectuate change in your communities, there's a lot of limiting factors that you can sort of accomplish, or sort of like put your mind around and say, well, I don't have this, and I don't have this. And it's easy to, and especially as a former public servant, it's easy to say, well, I can't get that, I'm not sure that I'm not sure that I can be successful in doing this. When you move forward with engaging with that public-private partnership, especially building on shared values, we see that we're able to produce significant success in there. So I encourage you guys, beyond just working with Hero or the other PACE providers, that fundamentally look at how partnerships can really enhance that value, understanding that it's only limited by what you're trying to accomplish. And let me sort of end with this. This is a good sort of economic argument as to why this is not a bad thing to be engaged in. So what you have here on this graph, this is a display of programmatic penetration. So this shows for 3 major programs that are attempting to accomplish the same thing, how they did within their service territory over the same time frame. So Sacramento Utility District, which is one of the most progressive public utilities, municipal utilities in California, had a whole house program. They were, by most standards, they were very successful with that program. They got about 0.2% of the market to sort of uptake on it. The statewide it was called Energy Upgrade California. I believe it's the utility whole home retrofit program. Their program was just under 0.1% of the market. And over the same time frame, the HERO program was able to accomplish 3.84%. The fundamental difference here is that SMUD and the Energy Upgrade California program utilizes ratepayer and taxpayer dollars to accomplish those outcomes. So there's a cost to the communities that they're in there. That 3.84% doesn't cost the community anything. And so it actually saves money as well as helping those communities accomplish more. So with that, thank you very much.
Well, you chose excellent slides, I would have to note, to convey your message, and really, really encouraging the conversation about how quickly you've been able to utilize what is clearly a need, thinking of my own home at 1,400 square feet and $500 utility bills in the summer and winter. It is obviously something of great demand, of great interest, and one in which our private sector partners have taken note of, which we greatly appreciate. And so this idea that harnessing private sector dollars, private sector interests, and what is clearly a great public demand is very, very exciting. And to tell us what exactly our private sector partners are looking for, we have with us Ian Park. Ian is a member of the Public Sector and Infrastructure Banking team, focusing on municipal clients located throughout the western region of the U.S. In his current role, he works with clients in the transportation, water, and general government space. Ian has led the execution of over 20 billion with a B, of long-term debt and 8 billion of short-term debt financing as senior or joint lead underwriter since he joined Goldman Sachs. You may have heard of them. In 2008 as vice president. Congratulations. Ian previously worked at Merrill Lynch for nearly 2 decades in various roles, including municipal housing finance, municipal housing capital markets. He also spent 4 years in London as a member of the Structured Finance Group, where he specialized in providing capital market solutions for European public sector clients and financial institutions. Here to shed light on what those folks are looking for, what is enticing to them, and how we can best partner, Mr. Ian Park.
Thank you, Leticia, for that very kind introduction. And I'm going to try to get set up here. I may not be able to hold this myself since I do have to use these glasses occasionally. If hitting 40 is definitely a bummer. A little bit past that now too. So does this go up a little bit, or maybe I won't be holding this. I think I may be okay. Well, again, thank you so much, Leticia, for the introduction, and Kate, thank you for inviting me to come and speak at the Local Government Commission. And what a great tradition this is. I was catching up with Jake beforehand, and it's pretty amazing. I don't think I've been to any conference that has been 26 years in the same venue, and just what a gorgeous venue it is. Just waking up this morning after driving through that snowstorm yesterday evening, and to see the sun out and just the beautiful vistas just really makes me feel good. What I wanted to do, when Kate and I were chatting a few months ago on this, Kate had asked, what are investors looking to help finance sustainable projects? And so I'm going to touch on that. But also, the question is, what can you and the community do to make your projects more attractive? So I'm going to end on that theme. And in between, what I'd like to do is just talk a little bit about the capital available, the types of capital that's available. I'm going to talk a little bit about the different sources of capital that communities can use and different ways to think about doing that. And then finally, I'm going to give you a handful of examples that we've worked on over the last couple of years, where it just takes the various bits and pieces of capital and pulls it together to solve one or two specific projects. So first off, let me touch on the capital side. There is abundant capital everywhere. And in fact, I'll talk with Josh, or to Josh's program in a little bit, but Renovate America has been the leader in the nation for PACE financing. And I want to say it was the first PACE program of size to actually tap the capital markets in a pure securitization. They've sold several $100 million to the capital markets. Now, what's significant about that is, you think about it, or what was the number, 56,000 individual loans that were done. If you have those little tiny loans, and that individual tries to go and get capital for it, yes, it's got its own credit structure with the property tax and everything else, but you're not going to get that loan. But when you pull together several thousands of them, you can put it into one security all of a sudden you can tap investors, not even in the state, throughout the country, even throughout the world, to be able to buy that at a very attractive cost of funding. So I mean, it really shows the power of partnership, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that for a minute. Just another example of just how much capital is on the sidelines. I was in New York earlier in the week, and we were fortunate enough to work with the state of California on their last general obligation bond sale. Now, as most of you know in the room, the state is a big issuer when they come to market. Well, the mail or the issue that we mailed, or the preliminary size, was a little over $2 billion, $2.3 billion. With interest rates being low, with kind of a dearth of capital or California bonds that have been in the market for the last several months, it was unbelievable to see the demand coming out of the woodwork here. When we got finished through the marketing process of that bond, we actually had 4,000 separate orders totaling $11 billion for a $2.3 billion bond issue. Now, the state ended up taking advantage of that. They increased the size up to $2.9 billion, and a lot of those orders weren't filled, but by and large, just a tremendous success. And largely that, part of it is California, part of that is the California story. Our credit for the state has strengthened. The credit for the individual components, the locals, have strengthened, at least some, and it's a very, very popular or very positive story here. But again, the theme, the message for you today is that there's absolutely the capital to come and invest in your communities. The challenge is to be able to try to come in and channel whatever revenue source you can to attract that capital. And so I'm going to sort of shift now and talk a little bit about what are some of the revenue sources that you can utilize. Well, let me first begin, or also comment quickly on the capital side. Capital is here if there's a strong likelihood that the person or the entity that gave you that capital gets their money back. In other words, you need to have a revenue source. And so I think point number one in terms of trying to find a project, you need to figure out how you're going to be paying for that revenue source and how you can channel it. And there's a tremendous number of tools that are out there that can help you do that. And we have been, as a firm, we tend to focus on large issues. We like complexity. And what I think needs to happen is that there needs to be effectively regionalization happening in California. Obviously, at the individual level, if you can do it, if you can do a transaction to be able to tap into the bond market or to do some other capital market transaction, it takes size, there's complexity, there's legal costs and everything else. If you have a $2 million project, that's probably not the right project to be spending your resources to be able to do the same thing that the state of California did earlier in the week. But with that said, if you can start to regionalize and you can start taking assets, and partnering with your neighbor and collaborating at a slightly higher level, the regional level, it becomes very powerful. All of a sudden, there's a lot of credit metrics that get improved by having that scale. And I'm a big believer in that. I mean, I think California, California's a nation. I think loose count, it goes between 7th or 8th in the world in terms of the size of the economy. But we have everything in this state. And let's face it, I think the state tries hard to get it right, but it's hard to make everybody happy with different views and different goals and different objectives. And so, I think ultimately, my personal bias is that you need to go where the communities, you need to be trying to connect the financing side with the policy objectives of the individual constituents there. And so it's a pretty heavy lift to think about how do you start doing that. And so what I thought I would do is just give a couple comments to sort of give a big picture of the different types of things that could be done. I'm going to give a couple examples, and then I'll leave with a couple themes for you to think about how we can improve the attractiveness of the individual projects. And also I'm mindful of time as well, so I'll try to fit that in very, very quickly. Firstly, we know sort of the state tools that are out there, or the state available tools, the most recent being now the Enhanced Infrastructure Financing Districts, or EIFDs. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail in terms of what that is, happy to touch it on the Q&A, but in terms of going to the individual local level, what is the EIFD? It's effectively replacing for redevelopment. It's taking a tax increment. So the idea is that you can have a project, the project will grow, it will add to the tax base. You can use a sliver of that revenue to be able to pay back the bonds. And that is eminently financeable when it's done in size or scale. Now the challenge with the EIFDs versus the typical redevelopment is the size. It's a watered down version. It's still a tremendous tool, and it's been terrific to see the state legislature move towards getting making an improvement on the various pieces of legislation that have happened. But unless you have a very large EIFD district, it's not going to be enough in itself. So then you start needing to kind of view it as building a cake. And again, depending on the project, depending on the importance of the project for the community, the key is to be looking under every rock to be able to try to find this capital. Yes, you can use some of the tax increment, but to be clear, what are you doing? You're borrowing from the future. You're borrowing from the tax revenue from the future. So you need to be thankful and mindful of all of that. Secondly, if they're, depending on the asset class, water or power, that's a great asset class because you already have established utilities. You have water ratepayers, you have utility ratepayers, and so if you can come up with a structure that will save some money on the energy side, well, you still have a ratepayer that can potentially use that savings to pay down debt, to help pay for the capital costs. And it's the same thing for water. If you can try to make a project that is making the system more reliable or sustainable, that you have a ratepayer to be able to come in and help pay for that. I think what really becomes a challenge is for those assets that just don't have that you're starting from scratch. And look, let's face it, you need to have capital to build things. You need to have capital to be able to run and operate things. And there are plenty of tools that are out there to help do that. And another one is public-private partnerships. I know that that's been bannered about. I don't want to get into a huge discussion on what that is, but it's effectively saying that the private sector can come in and potentially design, build, operate, and maintain, and potentially finance certain pieces of infrastructure. And that's tremendous. We've seen a lot of success in the P3 in the larger transportation projects. We're just starting to see P3 start to look into water and wastewater projects. In fact, what I think will be the first, or maybe the second major RFP for design, build, operate, and maintain and finance is going on right now through Santa Clara Valley Water District. They're looking to do an advanced purification system that's going to be crucial for their sustainability goals in creating new supply. Effectively, it's the toilet to tap. Not a great way to describe it, but that's what they're in the process of doing. I think the one little step with Santa Clara for that project, they're going to take sewer water from the city of San Jose. They're going to put it through a state-of-the-art facility, effectively, desal equivalent, all through the various filters. At the other end, it is potable water. You can drink that. But under California law, you're not quite able to just run that to your kitchen sink. You need to have an interim step. So they're going to take that water, they're going to put it down in the Los Gatos recharge facility. It's going to go into the groundwater. It's going to help the groundwater sustainability for San Jose, which, by the way, is sinking. I know there's a lot of places out here that are sinking too, but it's a big issue for the city. Well, there's a perfect example. There's a perfect closed loop that you have the ratepayers sitting there trying to, yes, they're going to have to pay a little bit more, but you're getting new supply for water. You're actually saving the subsidence issue that's there. The reason why Santa Clara is looking at this option, and they're looking, by the way, at traditional procurement as well, they think it could be done less expensively. They think it could get done quicker. Now, again, they're still very early on in the stages, but there's plenty of examples of, across the state where this is starting. Yet another project, which again, it's a alternative delivery. It's not that the project's any different than it would be through the normal way, but we're working with a bidding team for the University of California Merced campus. The story with that is pretty interesting. So for those that aren't that familiar with Merced, it is the most recent UC campus. It's the 12th. It was, I think, opened in 2005, so they started building it before. The goal was to have 10,000 students in the campus by 2020. And then we hit 2008, 2009. State budget is cut. The funding and the normal process for UC to develop capital projects was slowed down because it was all pay-go, the cash wasn't coming in. They had to stop. So then a few years passed, the state budget gets a little bit better, UC budget gets a little bit better. They finally realized, gosh, it's 2012, 2013, there's no way we can get this project done. If we start the normal way, we can't get it done. And so they looked at other alternative deliveries. They're in the process of procuring what will be the largest social infrastructure P3 done in the state. It's a $1.3 billion capital project. They're going to be funding along the way through their own balance sheet. But they've asked the private sector to raise $750 million of capital that will go along with it. Now, the capital that will come through it, and that's our job, we've been pulled in by a private developer that's working with a group. Honeywell is one of the participants. Webcore is a big contractor in the Bay Area. We're working with them. So we have an equity team, a developer that will be pulling together the contractor, the systems folks, the architects, the designers, everything to be able to give University of California a turnkey facility by 2020. And the reason being, the private sector can do things differently. I'm not going to say better than UC, I'm just saying differently. Their process is different, it's faster. They can save 2 years off of the development time, that saves money. They have the O&M, the operating and maintenance of the facility. Now, the way they broke it up, most of that will be done by UC folks in the normal process, but the energy efficiency side of it, the monitoring side of the social infrastructure is all going to be done by the concessionaire. And specifically Honeywell will be taking care of that. They've asked in the procurement for a monitor of every building, and you can know, I mean, this is sort of the world of big data. They're going to be looking at literally thousands and thousands of calculations per minute on every single facet of the building, have it all up on one desktop. So if they see, oh gosh, there's a building that's hotter or colder than it needs to be, they know exactly where to go. And so because of this investment up front, they're actually able to get more and lower operational costs going forward. Now, you take a step back and you kind of think, how does normal public sector procurement work? Well, it's all in the upfront capital costs. We don't consider the O&M all that much at the end, which strains future budgets. So again, it's not the end all, it's just an example that there's a lot of things that are coming down the pike. So I know I've kind of gone a little bit over, but I am mindful of that. But a couple things that I just wanted to, and I'll mention this in very high level. What can you do on the community level for the projects? First and foremost, be realistic on your projects. You do something that you hopefully have identified the funding source and be able to try to make that happen and get all of the resources together. By the way, that also includes buying or getting consensus building on the type of project that you're doing. Secondly, be consistent with the marketplace. In other words, you don't want to sit there and say, I have this great project, let's go out, let's get a lot of industry views on this, and then all of a sudden say, we may choose another path forward, or we may just decide to do something else, because the private sector is happy to make the investment, but they don't want to sit there and show up 4 or 5 times and then everything be canceled, and then all of a sudden you'll start losing that message. Look for partners. Again, the theme of the conference here. But if you can do, just for example, my Santa Clara example, they're partnering with the city of San Jose. They're taking effectively the feedstock to the facility from San Jose. But there could be, hypothetically, other parts of the Bay Area that could plug into that system. Maybe they have additional capacity for the wastewater. So if you can buy or build a regional facility, tends to be more economic than doing it separately. And finally, invite industry in. The industry, the private sector is more than happy. I'm sure if anybody in the room calls Josh and says, hey, could you sit down with me? I love this program. I'd like to learn more about it. He'll be in your office the next week. And we're the same way. And so the tools are out there, the resources are out there, and it's refreshing to kind of see folks in a room thinking about how to do things better. So thank you for the opportunity.